You said about humans only live for so long, right?
Yeah.
Actually.
Actually?
No, because so there's this thing called Calico Labs, right? And it's basically this lab. Hey guys, welcome back to Echo CSE Socks podcast. I'm Lesley and I'm a comp sci art student.
I'm Sam and I'm a software engineering student.
I'm Abby and I'm doing food sci and computer science.
All right, so today we'll be talking about ethics in tech. How companies can shape the way we interact with technology specifically. So recently, in the last week actually, New York passed a bill in which any manufacturer selling products in the state will have to release tools, repair guides, and parts for all their products. So what does this actually mean, and why was this bill needed in the first place?
So I think that for the bill to have been passed in the first place, it must have been some sort of catalyst in the first place for this to happen. For example, I think many companies, not going to name any names, but a lot of companies have been purposely making their products less modular, making parts soldered on, baked on onto their computers, so that even a small repair such as a display cable that's broken needs the entire display to be fixed, for example. And so I think by having this bill to be passed in the first place, this just basically allows the end users to more easily have access to repair guides and just being able to repair their devices in general, or even if it's not even for the end user, to repair repair companies, third-party repair companies will have an easier time to try and repair other people's devices as such.
I think it's good that it got passed because obviously now we're more worried about environmental issues, and with metals becoming more rare and extracting all the metals is such a environmentally detrimental thing. It's good that they released it because then instead of replacing the whole computer, they can fix parts and not
and
waste.
Prolong the lifetime of that device.
Yeah, and not waste the materials.
And I think that what was the why do you guys think is the reason for companies trying to purposely make their devices harder to repair for the end user?
I think mostly it's the thing with capitalism and monopoly. They have, if they have control over the
Everything,
repair,
yeah.
You can't go to a third party. You have to go to them, and then they can recommend you to buy their new product because it's cheaper to do that, but then you just fall into a trap of just spending more money. You have to spend more money at that company, and then now it's released smaller companies you can go to a third party and be hey, can you fix this for me? And that's just in general, I just think that's better.
Better overall, just not even in terms of, as you said earlier, not even in terms of just the end user, but the environment as a whole. Since we don't have to keep putting excess waste into our landfills and therefore extract more minerals from what's already limited on the earth, I guess.
Yeah. And I think what's worse almost is that because they will have these recycling programs, so this is us saving the earth because you have to buy this charger separately. We are using less packaging and reducing our footprint in manufacturing.
Yeah, it's greenwashing.
Yes.
Their business model. It's it saves them money, but it also helps them advertise.
Or the buyback programs.
At the same time, though, it seemed that if you just made the products modular in the first place and just kept it that way, it'd be a lot cheaper for the company as a whole, because then you don't have to make custom parts for every single device, and instead you can just say here's your motherboard, and then you can just plop it into the laptop, and you can make so many of those motherboards in bulk for much cheaper than if you had to make a new custom one for every single laptop, for example, and then, glue it onto the chassis, for example, or something.
It's they're actively putting time and effort to make our lives harder.
Exactly.
How can we make this harder to fix?
And
that's what they're doing.
It seems it costs more money to do so in the first place. So, yeah. So recently, there's also been another company who was a Kickstarter that actually started as a Kickstarter campaign. It was known as the Framework laptop. well, it is known as the framework laptop, it still exists, where basically everything, they aim to make as many parts in the device as easily accessible and modular to the user. And so maybe this was a sort of step towards the right to repair in the first place, I think. And it's quite cool because I know that they attach the top of the keyboard for like a laptop with like magnets, so you just unscrew some screws on the bottom and then you just take it off with like magnets instead of like glue or like clips or something. And then on the inside they have everything labeled, everything like QR coded for like guides that you can access. There's like color coded screws so you know which ones go where. There's even like I think a few spare screws that they include on the inside in case you lose some. And so yeah, I like all of the parts, like the RAM, the SS, like the storage, the motherboard I think is also replaceable. Like the display is also replaceable. The hinges, everything is like, other than the CPU, which is already obviously baked on to the motherboard, everything else was replaceable, which I thought like was really cool of them to do.
You can build your own PC.
Yeah, you can actually build your own
laptop.
PC. Like you can actually buy a bare bones kit from them, and then buy your own parts to put into the laptop.
Wow, that's really interesting. Do you like know if it's like available in Australia?
Yeah, sounds kind of good actually.
I feel like it should be.
Okay,
Probably
like,
just international shipping, you know?
Yeah, because I know like a similar thing, but it's like with phone, and it's like called Fairphone. And then like, because I was looking into getting a new phone, and I got really annoyed that like every time I get a new phone, like within like a few years, I will have to replace it.
Yeah, like
right?
the battery, or like do you have to replace the battery, for example, you know?
Yeah, like the battery will be like dying really quickly. But then like it's only like Fairphone's only available in like Europe because it's also like a Kickstarter, I think. So then they don't have enough resources to develop overseas. Yeah, it just feels so powerless in this sense because it takes so much, like it takes Kickstarters and like millions of backers just to make a small indent on what the companies think they should be doing, for example. Like the end user basically has no say as to what they want their devices to be, and yet companies just keep pushing out new stuff that you basically just can't even do anything to.
You're so right. Or especially like they fix things for the worse.
Yeah.
They fix things that aren't really broken.
Yeah, exactly.
So it just
like don't fix things that ain't broke, you know?
Yeah.
I think a big example was like the iPhone cameras. They're like, oh yeah, we're making them better each time. But like they've completely messed up how they take like night photos. Because they do this horrible like, they're like, IntelliSense. Look how smart our cameras are, right?
Maybe that's
and then like they do this like horrible blurring thing to make things brighter or like higher quality when it just looks like it's been like you've put like a beauty filter to 100, so it's like all the features are like blown out
together.
Yeah, and like it's just like worse than what I could do on like on my iPhone 5, right? With their new phones, which is just
maybe we should
really
just all go
sad.
back to buying iPhone 5s, you know.
We just return to tradition, reject modernity.
But do you think like phone cameras, there's like slightly related, slightly unrelated. You know how like there's like the DSLRs, and you can like now like on some of the phones you can like set the aperture and the shutter speed. Do you think like that could ever get to the level where it will replace like a professional camera?
I don't think it will.
No.
So
people should just like stick to getting like a bad phone camera.
Well, not necessarily, I guess.
Yeah, because a lot of consumers do like taking photos. It's just like their phone, right? And it's like pretty good what phones can do. Like, for example, the iPhone cameras, when not taking night photos, are like actually pretty crisp. And there's not a lot of options for like aperture. You have to download other apps for it. But
and even still, it'd be like fake aperture.
And there's like, you know, entire movies shot on phones and entire festivals for those, right?
Yeah.
So they're actually like surprisingly powerful, or more powerful than we give them credit for. However, cameras are still pretty important. I don't think they'd be completely replaced.
Like unless our phones suddenly become like this thick, for example, like you're not going to be able to accommodate the same amount of like.
Yeah, especially with like lens and like zooming.
Yeah, especially like although cameras, like the newest iPhone can shoot in 4K 60 frames, which is like pretty good.
Pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, and they also have this like cinematic mode which tries to do like the aperture thing by itself, but it's really bad. It's just like blurs the background. kind of like portrait mode, but
Maybe in a few years it would actually get quite good. Because portrait mode took some time to get there.
yeah, it's promising.
Yeah.
Promising technology.
How would you like relating back to like the fixability of phones, like how, because the main problem right now with a lot of the phones and like replacing them is things are getting updated so quickly and people want like the best.
Always want the newest thing.
Yeah, but with like the phone that I was talking about, their phone, because they're like a startup, they just use like these resources that bigger companies have made. So then it takes them like longer to update things. And then like with that, if it's like, even if it's replaceable, do you think it's good? Like as in like, if you want to constantly update, you'll be like chucking out your camera like every year.
Yeah, that's true.
But then like, I feel like that's still better, right?
I feel like, but I feel like the main thing is like everyone just, as we've already mentioned, like everyone just always wants the newest thing that is out there, and so they don't really give like much thought into, you know, if they actually need to be upgrading, for example.
That's unfortunately the nature of technology. How
And
fast it
and it's
evolves,
also the
right?
nature of, I think, just humans in general.
Yeah, Moore's law.
I think then like that's still better if it's like modular and you can replace
Yeah,
it, because
definitely.
then some people just want a new camera, so then they just like buy a new phone every year.
Oh,
But
that's
then
so
like
true.
instead of that, they can just replace their camera every year.
That'd be
Yeah,
such a
yeah.
nice idea.
But then people will have to design for the future.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
But I feel like you should always design with the future in mind.
like the Harbour Bridge. No, but like, no, I think that's like a fascinating idea because, sure, they have to think. Yeah, could this work for now? But will this also work in 10 years' time?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And
But where do you think like we should draw the line to say this product is definitely done for? We should just move on. Probably like,
What do you mean done for?
as in like,
unable to be upgraded.
yeah, and like we shouldn't upgrade it any further, because if you just keep upgrading it, then there's really not much point, because the internal hardware that you can't replace will just inevitably be too
I feel
old
like-
to keep up. You know?
I feel like so like in the case of a phone, like when will the casing get too old?
Yeah, maybe.
update.
Yeah, maybe like the casing or
Or
just
like compatibility, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because eventually there'll be like parts wouldn't be able to work together.
Yeah. So then I think this brings like another like slightly off topic topic to talk about. So because there's a very stark difference between Apple and Android's software updates and their support. Many people I think are actually unaware of this, but Apple actually supports their devices much longer than Android devices. For example, like I think as of now, the latest iOS probably still supports like iPhone 8s or 10s. I'm not too sure about that, but definitely like each of your iPhones will probably last at least like 5 or 6 years of software updates, while most Androids would probably only get like 2 or 3 years.
I think it's because Androids have such a quick like turnaround. Like they're making a lot of new models quite fast, and also
There
'cause-
are so many companies that use Android.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, and so like because Android just needs to keep evolving and covering such a wide range of devices, I think maybe that's probably why older devices get turned away more quickly.
Because like Apple iOS is used only by Apple,
Yeah.
but Android's got like all the Huawei's and like OnePluses,
Like all the other phones.
Oppos.
Not even Huawei anymore, they got banned.
Oh yeah. But it is kind of weird how it's just used by so many more companies. Kind of like Windows, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like Windows and
it's
Mac OS
because
kind of
it's
thing.
free to use, right?
Yeah, it's open source, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, it's
Open
open
source.
source. Maybe that's why it's like evolving so fast, because open source. Does that mean anyone can edit it, or is it?
Like not
Contribute.
Yeah, like they can
And
contribute.
anyone can contribute, right?
Ah.
Yeah, they can.
I'm not too sure if it's actually like entirely open source, but there's definitely like Android copies, which are
I'm
definitely
pretty sure
like
it's like open source.
yeah.
Yeah, I think I was.
But obviously, like not anyone can go make changes. You know, like they can't
Yeah,
just put
just
in.
commit,
So bringing it back to the right to repair bill, this bill actually took a very long time. It was like a really long thing in the making. I think probably even like at least 3 or 4 years by now, and it seems that it took so much work and for companies and consumers just to be able to reach the levels of huge companies and like their capitalist nature over all of their devices. So I think, like, what do you guys think? Do you think consumers will be able to hold companies accountable, like, more easily in the future?
What's it called? Class action?
I feel like there's like different groups of people right now. Like there's people who are like mostly like the younger generation who's like more focused on the environment and then more, I guess, woke. That want the push, but then there's still people who don't really mind. Like we said before, they like want the newest thing, so then for them it's not such a big deal. Yeah. And then I feel like a lot of people, because as consumers, like, it's really tiring to have to go research all these things.
Oh my God, yeah.
Like, it's not even like people don't care. It's like they don't have time and like the resources to go research all these things, so they would just rather just purchase whatever's there.
And I think it's also, that brings like another thing, because like companies have gone very ambiguous and like just almost arbitrary with their naming schemes. Like, think about, have you ever thought about, like, if you were trying to buy, I don't know, if you were building a gaming PC, for example, like, what the hell does a Ryzen 5 5700X mean? That CPU doesn't even exist. But, like, what are the...
I was convinced that was the newest lineup.
Like, to the consumer, like, those numbers basically mean nothing other than, like, a 5 is smaller than a 7, and thus the 7 should be better. Or, you know, like, I don't know, Samsung S21 Ultra 5G. Like, why are there so many just suffixes added to the names of the phones?
iPhone 13 Pro Max.
Yeah, and like I think companies should just either simplify their naming scheme somehow, or just, you know, make less models, because the more models leads to obviously more waste. I think.
True.
Like, I think they're just trying to cater to too many use cases in sometimes.
So we should not cater to everyone.
Okay, well, no. It's more like I feel some of them are less useful than others.
Yeah.
And if that's not the case, like, if we can't reduce the number of devices, then definitely somehow I think we should be able to replace, like, just ease the naming scheme, because as you mentioned earlier, like, too many people don't have the time to research.
Yeah, that's so true though. I was like getting my new laptop and I was like, so what laptop should I get? And they're like, oh, these are all like this, like the hardware components, and then you've got the software, like what OS do you want to use? And I was like, I have no idea. Yeah, and there's like so many things to consider now, like battery life, and then and like your screen, and then CPU, and then there's like the different CPUs. And I was like,
the end user just doesn't have the time to go and know about this stuff.
Yeah, it's like, I assume, you know, the bigger the number, the better it is. But at the same time, a lot of people don't need the best product on the market. So, I don't know. Yeah. Better naming schemes, or like clearer advertising, make it easier to find things.
Maybe Windows should reduce the number of laptops they're putting out all the time.
True. Why do they have so many models? We don't need that many.
Like,
I feel like
we can't say that Windows is our sponsor.
I feel like it's also I feel like it's like all these companies, they do it. It's like part of their advertising. You know how it's like you got the target audience. Like I feel like iPads, in like, you know how like now some of the iPad Pros are pretty much just like a computer and a tablet,
but they're not a computer. Right?
But then they've got the chip for it to be a computer.
It's just the software.
And then I'm just like, it's pretty much just like a laptop, but they advertise it differently, so then it's like targeted towards like students and also I guess like more designers,
creatives very heavily.
Yeah.
But Sorry.
But yeah, I think
no, go.
I know, but what my huge qualm with like the iPad Pro is that like there is no point in it, because who is editing like videos on their iPad, right? Like who is editing heavy photos on their iPad? This doesn't make any sense. And because like the thing with the iPad has great hardware, right? But its software
it's
just
holding
it's
it back.
it's literally just like an iPad OS. Like it can't do the same things a laptop has, but it's as powerful as a laptop. So it's like a bottleneck.
Oh,
it's like
so it's like limited.
Yeah, and like it's like I said, I can't imagine who would use their iPad for like intense video editing. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think bringing it back to our original topic, it's like I think at the same time as right to repair, I think Apple has actually taken like good steps in the right direction. For example, like they're actually listening to consumers, well, after a very long time, to bring back MagSafe, bring back HDMI, and thus like came out
ports.
Ports,
the
like the 2021
now.
MacBook Pros now.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot more people are happy with those devices because they've listened to the consumer and what they wanted. And I think just more companies need to step onto that train.
True, because when the consumers are happy, you get more money. It's literally just that easy.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
It's literally just that easy.
Touching back on the topic we were talking about before, about consumers not wanting to do research, I think like because of that, like tech companies have such a big cult following. Do you feel like there's what's it called, rise in techno faith?
Okay, yeah, anyways, so because of the power that these corporations, it's not these corporations, the power that these companies hold in the way they shape how we consume their products or how we use their products, right? It has created basically almost a cult-like reverence of technology and its capabilities, right? So it's like this idea called techno-faith, which was actually proposed in a paper by Ben Saunders I read a while back. But basically it's this idea of how much belief we put in our technology and how much we believe that technology can solve all problems, right? And that is likened to almost like a religious type of faith, because we're kind of putting our belief in a non-tangible thing, i.e. the progress of technology, say in like 10, 20 years, 100 years time, in, making the world a better place. But basically, in the past few years, right, there's a lot of greater social and political happenings in the world. The social and political state of the economy, really says a lot. Our wonderful COVID-19, and also the rise of, say, like tech giants, right? And as we become more aware of the impact of these tech giants, or how much money they have, and like their impact on the world, either through like directly or indirectly, through like their actions, through their donations, or through what they put their money and research into, right? So, for example, right, people like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, or those like these super rich tech billionaires, right? These billionaires all happen to do the same thing, things like technology, and they all use their money in vastly different ways. And like, obviously the way they use it is not lost onto people, right? So things like Elon Musk's rockets and robots and brain chips, there's a lot he's doing. Jeff Bezos' tourist trip to the moon or into space, I think those are the major ones. So like, how do you think these things can alter our perception of like technology, or what technology can do for us?
Like, if we're talking about the capabilities of what tech can do, in the sense of when like multi-billionaires like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, as you mentioned, like they have obviously the money to be able to go and do such things, and yet if you're thinking, I feel just consumers in general won't ever have, well, maybe not ever, but like for at least a very long time, they're not going to have such, if you want to say, luxuries as the multi-billionaires. For example, I don't know, going to space, for example, as a showcase of what technology can do. But obviously, I feel the technology is still not there. Like, I don't know, it's just not, viable to put people into put any old civilian into space right now at the moment.
Wait, so are they like investing in these projects, or are they just like doing it for themselves?
I think
It's both, right? Because they say like
they say they're
it's
investing.
for the greater good of humanity.
So they mean
right?
like greater good of humanity.
And especially on Elon Musk, right? He says that like, I want to go to Mars for the betterment of humanity or for like the next step
to
of
save
evolution.
overpopulation,
Right? But is that idea like when we get to that point, who will be able to do it?
And it's just like a money sink in the end. Just like pouring our money straight into it and just we're not gonna get anything out of it.
Yeah. Because like what's interesting about transhumanism or this idea of like techno faith, right? So a lot of people think transhumanism is like the great equalizer, right? Because I haven't defined what transhumanism is yet. Alright, so basically guys, transhumanism is based as when we believe we can go past our human bodies, right? There's a thing called humanism, which is like belief in like what humans can do. Transhumanism is like surpassing that and going past what a human body is, right? Into perhaps
cyborg.
Yeah, machines. We love talking about cyborgs, but that is like kind of part of what transhumanism is, right? Uploading ourselves to the cloud, things like that. And obviously these things sound super like immaterial, like really abstract, or like wow, that's like millions of years into the future. But
it's also sounds kind of like dystopian in a
sense.
sense.
But these things are actually a lot closer than we think they are, right? And another interesting thing about this is how this supposedly great equalizer, where everyone will be
like
will be cyborgs.
Not cyborgs, but like
walking androids.
Walking androids, yeah. But like the idea where perhaps we'll be more like liberated from societal constructs, things like money or whatever, right? But that's not really the case.
That's
right?
like really not the case, because for you to become like incorporated with tech physically, you need the money. And I think like we see that a lot in like, I guess like this is a bit fictional, but all those like cyborg dystopian futures where people are like
the half of their face is like wires basically.
But like I've seen like some where they're like people have to scavenge for like parts, or like the lower income people get like I guess like attacked by like in their lower income neighborhoods for their parts, which is like that's still related to like money, I guess, because you need money to do stuff.
And like in the end, like does it seem even as a worthy investment to become something like greater than humans, for example? Like is this worth pouring money into instead of say finding a way to solve climate change,
Yeah, no, that's actually a really interesting idea. It's like, where should we put our research into? It's like this. It's like, back then when the US was trying to go to space, everyone's like, why are we wasting money trying to get to the moon, bro? Like, it's interesting where our priorities lie, like for this great like advancement of humankind, or she's trying to fix the problems that we already have. But then there's also this idea that if we advance humankind just like outwards towards space, we'll be able to fix our existing problems. They're like, oh yeah, let's just set a colony on Mars, right?
But that's not like
problem
fixing.
It feels like getting ourselves like you're just solving our problems by making more problems and covering up the previous ones.
Well, I think that's a trend in humanity.
Yeah, it's just a trend in humanity.
There's a lot of things we've done where it's like, oh, let's advance, and then there's problems created by the advancement.
Like we've just become like smart but not smart enough.
Yeah, it's like because they don't. Well, like obviously, like humans only live for so long, right? So a lot of the times, especially like in the last, I guess like the last decade, where a lot of things were like created. They weren't thinking about like, in like 100 years time, the plastic that it was like all the things like I think like smoking when it was first like
it was first introduced like I think everyone no
it was like advertised to be like good for your health.
Yeah. Even doctors recommended it.
And then also like plastic they like recommended it. They're like, oh, single use.
Or like leaded fuel was another one.
Oh yeah.
They like put lead into like all their
Oh,
fuel, and then it just got released into the environment, and then it's just, like I don't know how they studied it, but like everyone's IQ dropped.
They knew,
like actually dropped.
like they knew it was harmful, but like it got pushed forward for economic reasons.
Yeah. Which is
Isn't that just like everything?
It's like everything.
it's just humans in general. This is the capitalist nature of humans.
What you said about humans only live for so long, right?
Yeah.
Actually.
Actually?
No, because so there's this thing called Calico Labs, right? And it's it's basically this lab or something doing research towards extending the human lifespan, right?
Whoa.
But what's interesting are the people that are really backing this or like putting money into this or whatever,
Yeah.
right? You've got like Alphabet's CEO, right? Google's parent company. They're putting a lot of money towards this. Jeff Bezos, obviously. So all these like Silicon Valley billionaires are looking on how to extend their lifetime, right? And they're putting money towards that. And I just think that's so interesting and so dystopian, obviously, right? Because
Yeah.
Like how long by do you know?
yeah, it's like wait, what did you say?
How long by do you think? As in how much
Oh.
They're
more?
just as much as possible.
As much as
Yeah,
possible.
or like
what, like 1,000 years?
or not even, or maybe it's just like preserving our
Yeah,
mental
like-
clarity, right? Because
yeah.
obviously it declines when we get older.
But yeah, but like what if
So-
but your cells would, decline as well,
Our human bodies.
Yeah,
right?
But
There's-
then you
like-
just like
just replace more parts with
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah, you see, that's interesting because that's like literally what Calico Labs is looking into, right? They're looking at the biological way to extend that part of our
yeah. So we're just like living
Body, right?
cancer.
Living cancer.
That's really true, actually. No, but like, yeah. And what's interesting, because a lot of people say like, because their research is aimed at augmenting, like, not really augmenting, but altering this like biological aspect part of ourselves that
Yeah.
ages, right? How can we stop that, like our body from receiving the facts like, oh, time to die, right? Like, it's time to stop aging. And they're like looking at things, trying to study how, signals are sent around our body, right? Neurons and stuff, and how we can like replicate things with technology, or how to like alter the way things are received and sent with technology,
Yeah.
right? And things like Elon Musk's Neuralink, it's the idea of melding biological like signals or trying to like replicate them with artificial components. And like,
Yeah.
is that feasible? Like replicating neurons and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. I feel like that's feasible in the future because like our body's pretty much how the nervous system's just like electrical signals, right? But it's like it's going to take a lot of research, and I don't think our technology's able to map out
Yeah.
the neuron maps yet.
Like we can't just tell our bodies a bunch of ones and zeros, for example, and that will like translate to
Yeah.
like movement, for example.
I think that's where like what's the thing that's not ones and zeros? Quantum.
Oh,
Yeah.
Quantum computing comes in.
True.
I think that's a side they're looking into. But
So we all just become Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah, no, it's actually very, because quantum, because it's like Moore's law, right? Or like the things like
Yeah,
they
yeah.
get smaller every year, and
Yeah.
they've reached a point where they're like
You can't
smaller
go any
than
smaller.
atoms itself,
Yeah.
right? So how do we continue that progress? And it's through quantum computing, right? Because why did you stop it? Because quantum computing utilizes the smallest particles that exist or we know to
physicists
exist,
are going to
right?
get triggered while we're talking about this.
Oh my god! Actually, yeah, cut this. I'm literally not. I don't. Okay, yeah.
We're not qualified to.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
we don't talk about this because we don't know enough.
Okay, no quantum.
Just put a disclaimer.
No quantum.
We're not physicists. We're not quantum
Yeah,
computing
but
people.
this is like for the layman, right?
I think we can put it in. Just
Yeah.
just say like disclaimer.
Just
we're
be
not.
like, yeah.
We're not
too
qualified to
sure.
talk about this. This is just.
Yeah. But it's still interesting at what quantum computing can do for us. It's like instantaneous. I mean, I don't know about instantaneous, but it's obviously like the fastest we can get,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
faster than humans. We're going like that's already
Yes,
going
yeah,
past.
no. But computers are faster than humans.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, you're right. Yeah. So I meant like maybe it's like how long does it take for signals to be sent on the body? What are we compared to machines? How
Well,
efficient is our body?
Signals in a body actually travel pretty quickly, but they're not
then-
actually like electrical.
Yeah.
They're like chemically electrical.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
true. Yeah. I was like, wait, no. What was I gonna say? I feel like I also want to talk about how, like, you said most of the people investing is like in this technology is like the big tech people. And I'm like, I feel like sometimes it's like the people who invest in this are like, I don't see why. Like, personally, I don't see why I want to live for that long.
Yeah, I would agree.
But then I'm like, I feel like these people have such big ego. They don't trust anyone else to like continue their
legacy.
Yeah. So I'm like, either it's the future, because obviously I feel this will be like optional. You will be like, not everyone will extend your life, right?
Yeah, but then I feel like that would turn into some sort
like
of
suicide.
That's not suicide.
Right? That's actually really
if
interesting.
you can live for that long and you choose not to.
But at the same time, like, there's people who choose not to, I feel they'll reach a point where we become segregated.
It's like there's
like
always
racial
new
prejudice,
systems,
like
always
all
new
that kind of
systems
stuff.
coming in
But
place.
But then it's like the thing, like, if it actually becomes like all new technology have like backlash, but this is such a thing that a lot of people have talked about, because it's like the issues that come with it is like overpopulation. Like, I feel like in general the world is moving towards I want less children. So maybe like the living forever thing and overpopulation,
it's like the problem will solve itself. That's actually really interesting.
And that is why we had like the massive population boom in like the past century, is because there was that time when people just kept having too many children, and then suddenly technology just went, and so everyone's life all of the children just kept surviving, and so that's why we just skyrocketed in population.
Keep surviving. But yeah, look at the way that technology has impacted us as a greater humanity thing, right? And I also think, once again, going back to the idea of living longer, and that whole thing with like all these like tech billionaires choosing or wanting to live longer, right? It's like that is part of transhumanism or techno-faith, right? Like, they believe that they want to surpass what they already can do, and they think they can do it. Like, they believe that's possible, right? Otherwise, why they're throwing money at this?
Like, do you think, because I feel like they would be the most likely people to want to, so like, do you think like the first generation of like these extended life expectant people would just be like a group of egoistic people? Like, what would the world be like? Because I personally feel a lot of people won't opt for the option to like live forever, right? So like, would that shape humanity in like a different way?
And it would seem like those people who develop the technology, or like just the really rich people, like, what if they have more access to, say, like better parts for themselves? So like, wouldn't they live longer? Wouldn't they become just more powerful, like almost like a god in a sense, basically?
And like, I guess this is like kind of the dilemma, right? It's like, we either try and take power away from corporations and the research they're doing, right? But then that means we have to, who else is going to conduct this research that's like meant to like better us, whether it be for these like extreme type of purposes or just like general research, right? We'll have to look towards government, and government is just, it's hard to do anything with like government, because there are just so many levels and so many people you have to like check with, there's a lot of red tape and bureaucracy, right? And so we either have to like go for this very slow, possibly very little progress if we take power away from corporations, give them to the governments, or we can like have this acceleration by like putting more belief in these corporate these companies these companies to give us that progress, right?
But that progress will only be like, if you look at it realistically, these companies are only going to care about people with money.
Or so like who can fund them or the product, right?
Their sponsors, you know?
Like, very, like the people you've mentioned today, I don't think they do a lot towards charity. Like, most of the charity they do is for like media purposes.
But then there are people like Bill Gates, for example, who are quite involved in philanthropy.
But it's like I don't think he's investing.
He's not investing in this kind of technology,
kind of
so that's the
things,
thing.
right?
Like, you have one end and then you have the other end.
And I think that's really interesting, because like if we were to say, all right, we should give companies more power to, research or to give us solutions, right? How can we be so sure that those solutions are going to be shared with like the rest of humanity?
Yeah, and
right, like
how can we trust them?
Exactly, but we also can't do that because then we won't have any progress.
Exactly.
So
it's sort of like in the current situation, given how big companies are like treating, just like back to from our previous topic, just like based on how they're treating consumers with their products. Like if this is going to be brought into transhumanism and we're wanting the corporations to actually get on with research about doing this, when we reach the same sort of like fate as the products right now, but we are essentially the products in a sense. And so
like our data.
Yeah, like do they become like, are they able to control us? Like not even just as a sense of like a, society, but actually physically control us,
Yeah, I think it's like the balance between the people, the companies, and then the government.
It's a
like
triangle.
Their legislations and bills.
Because it's like the government essentially is supported by the people, but they also have their own say, I guess, in a lot of things. But it's like, it's probably like the balance between the government and these companies, because these companies are like, I guess, like innovative. They move a lot faster, but governments are so careful.
But I want to bring this back to something I literally just saw today, right? And the impact of government. Oh my God. Okay, I can't find the exact number, but literally the Labour government has decided to put 1.25 million or billion. Those are two very different numbers. It's probably not million, maybe it's billion.
It's probably billion.
It's probably billion. Oh my God, like towards renewable energies in Australia. I just thought that was really interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because, it is up to all these things that are bigger than our control to secure our future or like our standard of living in the future, right? And it's just, I don't know.
Is it really out of our control though?
Exactly. Individual
we
voice.
can vote.
Yeah.
Well, you cannot.
Yeah. Well, I
No.
I cannot, but you guys can. Yes.
Yeah.
I cannot.
Oh, yeah. I can. Yeah, right. The person was political. Everyone, if enough people have a say, like.
Do you think children should be able to vote?
No.
No, that was so fast. That was such a fast.
What's a child? I'm sorry. When you said children, I thought like a 10-year-old. Like, why are we giving them out? I think you mean maybe like 16-year-olds. Although I think times are changing, in which those teenagers are like already 18. If that makes sense.
And I think at the same time, it's the teenagers who are like teenagers to like the mid, so like 30s, like
millennials.
The millennials and the, I don't know, Gen Z, I guess if you want to say. It's really it's really them who I think are advocating for a better future for ourselves, because we're going to be the ones who have to basically clean up the mess of the previous generation, and then subsequently, help our next generation after that to be able to live in a an actually decent society, or like just treating our earth in a better manner.
All right, so like let's bring it back to us, right? Because we as students at UNSW studying computer science, right? How does all these ethical like implications or issues or like dilemmas impact the way we think about our degrees or what we're studying, or possibly our careers in the future, like companies that we want to work for?
Like definitely at the moment, I think just as a CS student right now, we're probably just thinking of ourselves in, I don't know, developing software, or I don't know, working as an IT manager kind of thing. But definitely with the rise of the techno-faith and transhumanism, I think our career path is actually like quite actually unknown probably at the moment, because one, you could go back to the aforementioned jobs that I already mentioned before, but then we could also have new career options in helping companies and just big companies developing their transhumanism parts, or researching into them, for example.
Yeah, I think similar to what you said, we wouldn't help like I feel like with my degree I wouldn't help directly. I guess like in the future when I have money, I will invest it in these things. But it's also like sometimes I'm thinking, would that take too long? Like, will it be too late for me to invest? But yeah, like, I don't think our degree can like help directly.
But I think that's just like one thing that's a part of learning CS is that we have to be always on top of the things that are coming like at us at such a fast pace. Like I think it's just something that we definitely have to keep learning about. Well, I guess, yeah. But I think out of all of probably the career pathways, it's probably one of the ones that are fastest growing and like changing in comparison to the others.
Or more like the core values of the companies we work for. So yeah, I mean, not really maybe a plug, kind of a plug, but like Canva. Yeah, so when they screen your interviews, right, they're like, make sure that you really do believe in like the core tenets of their like philosophy, right? Or like I think one of them is like be the like do good or something, like that idea, right? And that is like a company that is trying really hard to try and be like a force of positive change, right? And like do things like that, does that make a difference to you, or like how you perceive a company? Or
yes, I think overall it does, like, because I feel like if the company cares about that, the environment, like the people you work with obviously will be like good, I guess, like it'll be a nice work environment. I think that's more important to me, not only like inside the company, not only like what you're working towards, but also what you're working with.
Right? Yeah, it's like going back to the whole like ethics and technology, right? It's like, because we can, you know, we like as say like programmers or software engineers, right? You get paid and like that's your day's work, right? Right? And like the idea is maybe we should think like more, consider, or like
the company,
or, like company, or like these ethical obligations that say these companies may have, that we are kind of just like not really paying attention. We don't think it's very important to think about.
I feel like for me, I do think about it, like some of the companies I've looked at like what they do, not naming any names, but some mining companies and their treatment towards like Aboriginal, like native, like their land and like where they're mining is like really not good. So I was like, I don't want to like even like internship. But then the other thing is also like sometimes you need to go into the environment and to see like how, like why they're doing it, you know, to change it. Like it's like the thing where a lot of scientists don't want to get involved with politics, but that's the issue, right? Because there's no scientists in politics. So the politicians don't listen to the scientists, and the scientists
can't do anything about it.
It's like these two parts are so segregated. It's like,
so you could be like, I will enter this company and try and change it from within. But I feel like a lot of these companies, we as employees can't really change anything. It's more like, I think my big dream is to get rich and become an investor so I can change things.
I see. Well, it's like, well, like it's the idea of like being able to like figure out how to fix those issues by experiencing them, or like
firsthand.
I think like also touching on before, I was like talking about how work environment's important to me. If it's like, I think that's important because if it's a good environment, the company will listen to the employees' feedback. So then you as an employee can make
a bigger change.
I see.
But it's like the really big thing with like tech companies are still corporate companies. It takes a lot of levels to change things. So like the only way is like you stay in the company for a long time.
And get to the top.
Yeah, or like
basically.
you keep changing. Like it will still take time for
Yeah.
you to, but I don't know. There's like people who take the external path of being like an activist and using their voice instead of like skills, I guess, and like speaking out and like evoking like the consumer to like change it.
All right, so I guess my entire point with this, right, was how we, as like studying computer science, right, I think it's important for us to at least have like an ethical understanding or acknowledgement of all these issues that surround technology, right? Not just in the way, say, we like build or create it, but how we interact with it as consumers.
So if you guys enjoyed this podcast, remember to like and subscribe. If you want to see more podcasts like this one, you can check out the CSE Soc Media website, and all the links are in the video description below.
Thank you for watching and listening, everybody. See you next time.